Hello, my name is Malik Jabbar, author of the Astrological Foundation of the Christ Myth and other books on the subject of astrotheology. Our subject is the biblical apocalypse. According to the Bible, the end of the world will be ushered in by four demonic supernatural beings described as the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. This is obviously mythology. Our objective is to explain this cosmic mythology under the protocols of astrotheological symbolism. So let us begin. So in Revelation chapter 6 verses 1 through 8, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4 part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the earth. Now, I shall use this sky map to give an explanation of the astrotheological symbolism. The ecliptic is the main focus of the phase that we're going to discuss here. This golden line here, that's the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the pathway of the sun. And the regions of the sky indicated are the upper northern hemisphere above this dark line here, and the lower southern hemisphere below that line. And the main focus of astrotheological symbolism, or the main premise, I should say, is that the Bible is symbolically retelling the yearly cycle of the sun over and over again. That's why you'll find many of the various biblical stories in the Bible, they are similar. Stories of concerning Jesus, Moses, Abraham, to some extent Noah, and what we're discussing today, the apocalypse, the lives of all of these personalities and events, is a retelling under different phases of the cycles of the sun during the course of 1 year. And why this retelling has taken place so many times in the Bible, I will explain that later. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to trace the movement of the sun along the ecliptic. And this pathway that we're looking at here represents 1 year travel of the sun through the cosmos. So we're going to trace this the sun's travels and prove that the apocalyptic doomsday scenario of the Bible is actually a symbolic tale reflecting the passage of the sun through the cosmos during part of its course in 1 year. And that will be the main focus of explaining this symbolism. Now, it is important to remember that as the sun travels along the ecliptic during the course of 1 year, it travels through the 12 signs of the zodiac. And this is fundamentally important in astrotheological symbolism. So what we're going to do is show that the four horsemen of the apocalypse are really representing the passage of the sun through 4 signs of the zodiac during a given period in its annual cycle. Now, another thing is the time setting. This symbolism was written under the beginning of the Christian era in the 1st century AD. So I have this sky map set to about 70 AD, the beginning of the Christian era. And this is important when we are dealing with astrotheological symbolism, because the relationship of the stars to the cardinal point, it changes from era to era. So in order to decipher symbolism correctly, we need to have our sky map set at the proper date and time. Now, I'm going to move the sun about 1 month at a time incrementally so you can see its movement. And as I said before, this line here represents the celestial equator. That's very important in astrotheological symbolism, in cosmic symbolism, in cosmic mythology, because it divides the upper hemisphere from the lower hemisphere. And in astrotheological symbolism, when the sun is above the celestial equator, it is in its exaltation. But when it is below the celestial equator, it's in its debasement, its affliction. So the symbolism of the sun above the celestial equator is positive, and its symbolism, the symbolism of the sun below the celestial equator is generally negative. And this is all determined by the sun's relationship to the celestial equator. So that's fundamentally very important in astrotheological symbolism. So we move the sun along because we want to see which sign, which zodiacal sign is related to the position of the sun, because that would give us an idea of what symbolism to look for. Now we see right up here the sun is related to Leo. It's right next to Leo in the zodiac, but we're not dealing with symbolism of Leo this time, so we won't pay too much attention to that. But we'll take the sun further on its yearly path into its 8th month, and we'll take it to its 9th month here. Now, the sun at this point is crossing from the upper hemisphere into the lower hemisphere. And this occurs at the autumnal equinox. And we see as it's passing through this from the upper to the lower hemisphere, it is right at the zodiacal sign of Libra. Libra is the sign that embraces the sun as it falls into the lower hemisphere, and we know the whole lower hemisphere represents affliction. And when from the 6th chapter of Revelation that we just read about the four horsemen, one of the verses says, "Come and see, and I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had balances in his hand." That is a clear reference to the zodiacal sign of Libra. The black horse that had balances in his hand. So when you see, when the sun enters its affliction, now as I said, the apocalyptic prophecy of the Bible, as are innumerable other prophecies of the Bible, is actually referring to the sun. The idea of some mythological some actual destruction of the world by four horsemen, then God comes to deliver us and so forth, all that is myth. All that is myth that the clergy has put upon us. But the affliction that occurs in the symbolism, it is to the sun. And as I said before, anything the sun suffers, we suffer, because the sun is what controls and sustains life on earth. So that is important to remember. So the first sign that the suns encounter is the sign of the scales, and which is referred to as one of the four horsemen. So we want to move the sun continuously along his path. So let me go up here and to one more month. After Libra, the sun enters into the area of Scorpius. Now we know that the Bible said, and there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. The scorpion is the sign of the killer, the sting of the scorpion, that's the sign of the killer, the disruptor. And so they have used that to describe the affliction of the sun in its second step below the celestial crater in the underworld. They have used the sign of Scorpio to describe this sting of death to the sun, so to speak, that it is experiencing. At Libra, it was captured up higher when it went through Libra. It was captured. I mean, it's entering into judgment, and the sign of the scales is indicating that. And the next sign is the sting of persecution or harm that comes upon the sun as it goes deeper into the underworld, and that is signified by Scorpio. And we go down another month, and here we see Sagittarius. Sagittarius, that is a very vivid piece of symbolism. We were told in the Bible passage, and I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. That is symbolism of Sagittarius. You know, Sagittarius is noted by the half man, half horse, and it holds a bow and arrow in its hands. So they gave us the sign of the bow so that we could relate that and see that similarity there in explaining that symbolism. That is very vivid. And actually the writers seem to have thrown in another piece of symbolism to help reinforce our interpretation. They said he was given a crown. Well, you notice right below Sagittarius there's a corona australis. That's the southern crown, and that's right close to in the same sector, I should say. Those who have read my books, you understand the importance of these sectors. And so we see the crown associated with Sagittarius, even though the crown is another constellation, but they are in proximity to each other. So it could be that they threw the mentioning of the crown in so that we would recognize the association there. And we take a step to the 12th month, and there we come to Capricorn. Capricorn nowadays is signified by the sea goat. The goat is the operative term for us to comprehend. And the goat is a universal symbol of the devil. Now, Capricorn is the last sign, the final sign in the symbolism. It's at the bottom of the sun's path. And Capricorn, it represents the final destructions. Capricorn represents hell. The goat is a symbol of hell. And the Bible verse says, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. Capricorn is the lowest position. It's at the winter solstice. It's the lowest position of the sun, and it's when the sun dies in many parts of the symbolism. And in this apocalyptic phase, this sign of Capricorn is weighted to is compared to destruction, and that carries the same significance of death. In this phase of the symbolism, this represents the destruction not of the world but of the sun. And you will notice in the caption that I have here of the goat. This is a picture from several centuries ago. It shows a goat, and you notice that the goat is blowing a horn, and this horn is the horn of judgment. The horn is prolific throughout the Bible as a symbol of the final warning. It comes from the Jewish symbolism, because within Judaism the shofar, however it might be pronounced, shofar. That's a horn that to use to give a warning and as a calling for the Jewish people within their ritualism. And we notice that the artist in this depiction that was done several centuries ago of the goat, of the devil goat, they placed this horn within the caption, showing that they are trying to convey to us the relationship of the sign Capricorn and the devil and the judgment. And so that's just a clear representation of the significance of the sign of Capricorn as the sign of the devil and the sign of the final destruction. So I think this symbolism is very clear and precise. Most certainly, it cannot be coincidental, and this mythology of the Bible concerning the four horsemen, astrotheology, it gives us the only sensible and rational interpretation of this apocalyptic symbolism and other similar symbolism in the Bible. The only way that we can come to a rational explanation of these type of tales that are given within the Bible is through cosmic mythological associations, and that is the fundamental purpose of astrotheology, is to explain the mythology in a rational way. Now, another thing I would like to mention is that I spoke of the different phases of the symbolism in terms of all the symbolism, or a great deal of the symbolism in the Bible. It concerns the passage of the sun through the zodiac, and I mentioned that there are different phases of the symbolism depending on which unit is used to represent the sun, whether it be an event, a people like Israel, the life of Israel. We can show you the entire life of Israel by tracing its patches through the sun, through the ecliptic, by tracing the sun's patches through the ecliptic and relating to the background of stars and constellations relating the stories of the Bible to the background of stars and constellations, we can show the entire journeys of the so-called children of Israel. Also Samson in the Bible. That's another phase of this solar symbolism. Abraham is another phase of this solar symbolism. And of course Jesus, and there are other notables in the Bible. We can correlate the scenes of the Bible to the cosmos with no problem, in the same way that we've just correlated this the apocalypse to this symbolism here. And one thing I'd like to show you, let me put up the sky grid. When we're dealing with astrotheological symbolism, dealing with sectors is extremely important. In other words, the sun passes through the zodiac, and it's that background of constellations, the zodiacal constellations, which are reflective primarily of the sun's passage. But also any signs within any constellations or any stars within a given sector that the sun is in, they also fall into the symbolism. So, in other words, to show you something about the different phases of the symbolism, how we can sometimes draw on different aspects of the constellation of stars. Say if, for instance, we were at this point discussing the symbolism in the phase of Jesus Christ instead of the apocalypse, then various other constellations might come into play to reflect that symbolism. And some different constellations, they would have multiple meanings. They might have one meaning under the apocalypse, one meaning under Samson, one meaning under Jonah, and so the meanings would vary according to the topic, the subject of the matter. So we know that Jesus dies at Capricorn also before his resurrection at the point of the winter solstice. And just to help to explain this point about phases, if you recall in the death of Jesus at the cross, they mocked him and persecuted him up to the point of nailing him to the cross, and they set a crown of thorns upon his head as mockery of that of him being the so-called King of the Jews. Now, if we were in the phase of the symbolism of Jesus, like this crown that I mentioned in regard to Sagittarius, being associated with Sagittarius in the apocalyptic symbolism, it would reflect, instead, we notice that the writers say that the crown of thorns was placed upon the head of Jesus in mockery at the point of his death. You had a corona australis here, that southern crown. It comes under a different application because the subject matter of the symbolism is different. And so we run into these matters when dealing with astrotheological symbolism. Now we notice this here is the sector of Capricorn and his death upon the cross. We look up and we see up here a clear representation of the Northern Cross as part of the constellation of Cygnus. We see this clear view of the cross. You know, these associations are palpable throughout all the interpretations of all the different lives in the Bible. We can show you a plethora of them, and it's just no doubt that the Bible is based on astrotheology, and depending on the subject that is under discussion, we can show you associations, cosmic associations, to show and prove that the story is simply a symbolic tale of the flow of the sun through the cosmos during the course of 1 year. Let me take this graphic off. It's clear. You can see things a little clearer. And well, yeah, I want you to make sure you see this cross up here that I said to you. That's the cross of Jesus' death at the sign of Capricorn in this phase of the symbolism. And astrotheology is very expansive, and there are many phases to it, because in other phases, you know that Jesus' death took place proximate to the Jewish holiday, the Passover. You're dealing with another phase of symbolism, and that's explained in my books. And as I said, the purpose of these videos is to aid in the study of the books. That's the whole purpose, because a detailed explanation of all these things is given in my books. And so we should move on to one other point that I want to make. Let's see if we can move this sky map back a little bit without any complications. I want to show you something, and I need to take it back to get this point to you concerning time and the importance of time in deciphering astrotheological symbolism. Now, as I said before, we have this set at about 70 AD in order to interpret this symbolism concerning the apocalypse, because that is when it was written. But now I want to make a change here and take this up to 2170, which we're not going to delve into any future symbolism, but I want to make a point about the importance of time. You notice in the Bible and other religious literature, there's always talk of a coming avatar, a religious leader that shall come at some appointed time in the future with a message, or to perform a function. I want to show you how this type of so-called prophecy is based on astrotheology, and it's a fundamental part of astrotheology. You notice how I changed the time here, and I said I was doing that for a significant purpose, and it's to show you how with every eras change every 2,160 years, and there are also changes in between, but we won't go into that. You find the information in my books. But you notice when we were explaining the symbolism of the apocalypse, and it began with Libra right at the celestial equator. By changing the time, notice that Libra is down here, the second sign. Instead of being the first sign of the sun's descent into the underworld as it was 2,000 years ago. When we come up 2,000 years, the position of Libra in relationship to the celestial equator has changed. What this means is that if symbolism was being written concerning the descent of the sun below the celestial equator in this era that we're now living in, or in any different era, the symbolism would have to be changed to match the position of the constellations, because they have changed as time goes on, as the era changes. This is why you always see in religious literature and tales that there's always another avatar coming. There's always another prophet coming. This is just esoteric language, reminding those who are enlightened that whatever symbolism is being written now, it only lasts for a given time, because the sky is constantly changing and the symbolism has to be constantly rewritten to match the changes of the cosmos. As I said, let me just take this change of time back here so you can see what I'm saying. See how when we go back 2,000 years, Libra is again back up here at the celestial equator. So this is why in religious literature, not just Judaism, Christianity, Islam, but in all of them, because all the major religions are based on astrotheology, they always talk about a future avatar, a future one that will come and perform some function, because it is necessary periodically that the symbolism be rewritten, as I'll show the change again here, in order to reflect the changing positions of the constellations and so forth, as they relate to the cardinal points, as they relate to the major sections of the sky. So is nothing mythical or strange when you understand the underlying reason why in the religious mythology they're always talking about some divine one coming in the future. Is really just a message to the priesthood, about the functioning, the continual revising of the symbolism to match whatever the position of the stars and constellations is. So I think that's a very important understanding of it. Astrotheology, it is a science, and we're talking about phases here. I have spoken to you about the different phases of astrotheology in terms of the symbol that is represented. And I want to point out one other factor of the different phases before we close this out. Now, I showed you the grid before, which is very important in explaining the sectors here. But now what we've been dealing with so far is what we call the equatorial grid. And this is symbolism that is reflective of the position of the Earth in the cosmos. But besides the equatorial phase of astronomy and the equatorial phase of the astrotheological symbolism, there are other phases, and But we will be concerned primarily with the equatorial phase in our basic explanations, which I'm giving to you. But I want you to be aware that there are other phases also. Now, the equatorial phase of the symbolism, of the equatorial grid, is geocentric. Geocentric. In other words, this astronomy is reflecting the position of the Earth in the cosmos. But if we were to enter into topocentric astronomy, we would need a different set of protocols for the interpretations. Let me give you a look here. As I've shown you before, this is our grid for the geocentric astronomy, the equatorial phase, which would be our major focus. But as I said, I want you to be aware that there are other phases of the symbolism that require different protocols of interpretation. So if we switch from this equatorial phase to the topocentric phase, we see that it's an entirely different picture, and it requires a different protocols for the interpretations. In other words, the astronomy, the category of astronomy that is interpreted, the protocols within astrotheology that interpret that category of astronomy are somewhat different. They have to, the astrotheology has to be modified to fit whatever the target of the interpretation is. So I want to remove this. I don't want you to get hung up on the topocentric view, because we're going to be mainly concerned with the geocentric, the equatorial view. But I want you to be aware that there are other phases to the symbolism. Astronomy, is very expansive, and it covers really every phase of our life. Astronomy is a science. It's a way of interpreting the mythology of the ancients, which was a way of encrypting scientific language. But with the with topocentric astronomy, say for instance, if the ancients were constructing a monument of some type, or structures of some type, whereas the purpose was to capture the light of the sun or the moon or of a star at a certain location at a certain time. The geocentric astronomy wouldn't be sufficient to hone in to a particular location on Earth. For that purpose, they would have to use topocentric astronomy. Topocentric gives them the ability to calculate the coordinates of a particular location, not just the coordinates of the Earth, the whole Earth itself within the cosmos, but this is honing down to a particular location, which would be much more precise for the purposes involved. And in that type of astronomy, we'd have to change the coordinate system. Well, the astronomers, they change the coordinate system to fit the purposes involved. Now we know the main coordinates that we use to in geocentric astronomy to track the Earth are the celestial equator and the north celestial pole and the declination and right ascension. But now when we're dealing with a specified location on Earth, we would have to use counterparts within the topocentric astronomy that relates to these coordinates within the geocentric astronomy. In other words, the north celestial pole, its counterpart would be the zenith of the location. For the celestial equator, its counterpart would be the horizon. For the right ascension, its counterpart would be the azimuth. And for the declination, its counterpart would be the altitude. Not the vertical altitude, but the altitude in degrees ascending from the horizon toward the zenith of the location. So the topocentric, that's another category of astronomy, and the astrotheology, which is used to interpret that type of astronomy, it has different protocols. And as we advance in the understanding of astrotheology, we will become introduced to those other protocols. We're not going to get into it now, but I want you to be aware that there are other protocols within astrotheology that we will cover as we go forward in our research. And it's all reflective of the methodologies of the ancients, because they used like I say, different protocols under different circumstances, but they all run in parallel. There's no radical departure from the system itself. These things run in parallel. Like I just said, there's a correlation between the zenith and the north celestial pole, a correlation between the celestial equator and the horizon. You just have to know, in doing the interpretation, where to put the correlations and how to apply them. So that's just a factor I wanted to bring to your attention. Now you can go to my site, thechristmyth.com, and read excerpts from my books which I have written on the subject of astrotheology. A link to my site should be below the screen here, thechristmyth.com, which will take you directly to the site. As I said, I have written 7 books on the subject of astrotheology. My books are like a course on the study of astrotheology. Each book, starting with the biggest lie ever told, gives you a increasing amount of knowledge about astrotheology. There are 7 books total, and the books can be bought in a set at a terrific discount at my site. But the first book, as I said, is the Biggest Lie Ever Told, 4th edition. Then you have the book 1, The Astrological Foundation of the Christ Myth. Then there's book 2, The Astrological Foundation of the Christ Myth. It takes you a little further into the subject. Then there's book 3, The Astrological Foundation of the Christ Myth. Book 4, The Astrological Foundation of the Christ Myth. Each book gives you a step up the ladder, so to speak, in the knowledge of astrotheology. Then there's the book Lifting the Gnostic Veil. It's another step up. All of my books deal with the subject of astrotheology. And the latest of the books is the Secret Origins of Judaism, which is also based on astrotheology. So you can find excerpts to read from all of these books at my site. Plus you can order the books, as I said, at a terrific discount. Also, one good thing to do, will be putting up these videos periodically to help in the study of the books. So if you will hit the subscribe button, whenever I do put up a video, you will be notified so that you can take a look at it right away. I do not put these videos up at a regular schedule because of time constrictions, but as often as I can, I do post videos. So by subscribing, you will be notified when they are available to be seen. So I thank you, and I appreciate your time.